So, okay, so our next presenter is Farânak Mirjalili, and she is a Jungian analyst in training at the C.G. Jung Institute in Zurich. She earned her research master's degree from the Center for the History of Hermetic Philosophy and Related Currents at the University of Amsterdam. Her research interests include Sufism, Zoroastrianism, and the alchemical traditions. She wrote her thesis on the intersection of laboratory and psychospiritual alchemy through documenting and analyzing a case study, which she will be presenting at the IAAP Congress in Zurich in 2025. Her presentation today is titled Good and Evil in the Zoroastrian Creation Story. And Farânak, you're welcome to present now.
Thank you, Phil. Thanks everyone for being here, and Ryan for that really wonderful presentation. There was a synchronicity for me with one of my clients this week around the dream and the trumpet. So I was really happy with this presentation. Thank you so much. So I'm going to share my presentation. Can everyone see it? Yep. Okay. So I'm going to start today, even though there's a lack of time, I decided to spend my valuable minutes on it, by bringing the Zoroastrian creation story to you in a way that's true to my tradition, to the Iranian storytelling tradition. We have a very ancient storytelling tradition, and this is the way I convey stories is through this kind of oral art. So I'm going to briefly tell the story in that way to you. So یکی بود یکی نبود زیر گنبد کبود غیر از خدا هیچ کس نبود. Once upon a time, beyond space and beyond all universes, there was a world of light, of beauty, of harmony and perfection. This was the world of Asha, truth, essence, created by Ahriman, the wise lord, or Ohrmazd as we know him. But he wasn't alone in this vast realm, for below in the dark abyss lived his brother, Ahriman, the Dark Lord. He dwelt in complete ignorance of his wise brother. Ahriman, also called Angrimanyu, was the lord of lies and death and destruction, everything opposite to Ohrmazd. Ohrmazd knew of his twin existence and so spent thousands of years creating beings of light, preparing for this inevitable clash between them. When time came, Ohrmazd created the material world, bringing Asha, truth, essence, into material reality. He began with this earth, protecting it with a crystal-like dome and adding pure moon waters to give it life. This beautiful orb hovered in space, perfect, untouched, and in eternal daylight. When Ahriman discovered this orb, he became restless, and his destructive hands itched as he gathered his armies, his dark armies, to attack this crystal dome. And the assault pierced that hard shell, polluting it with poison and chaos. This attack, though, formed, strangely, the first mountain, Hara Berezaiti, the axis mundi of my ancestors. The earth now started to grow more mountains and rivers. And on this tall, tall mountain grew a tiny plant, delicate, milky, full of life, and it held the essence of all the plants within it. When Ahriman found out about this plant, of course, his destructive hands itched again, and with a quick movement, he poisoned the plant, and it withered. Spenta Ameritat, one of the good beings, the divine beings of Ahriman, there to protect the plants and the earth, came to the rescue. She gathered the withered plant and put it in her pestle immortal and pounded it until it was the finest powder. She gave the powder to the rain deity, Tishtria, and he spread it around the earth until the earth became that blessed green that you and I know well. Ahura Mazda marveled at this green earth and felt it was time for his next creation, the great primordial cow, Gavodota, who was as luminous and strong as was the moon. But Ahriman, as you can well imagine, itching with his destructive urges, struck the great cow down. And the earth angel, Spenta Meritat, again came to the rescue, bringing its body to the moon. And the moon waters purified the body, extracting its seed, its divine essence, giving it to the earth angel, Spenta Ameritat. She, as she planted it back into the earth, it is said that from there all the good animals, the birds and the fishes grew from this seed. Then it was time for Ahura Mazda's most wonderful creation, the first man, Yima, or as Jung knows him, Ohrmazd. To Ohrmazd, the first man, Ahura Mazda gave 7 fires. Now that's its own story, but I want to focus on this 7th fire, which was the most glorious fire. It was the essence of Ahura Mazda himself. We call it the Farno or Xfarno, as Henry Corbin writes about it. It's the light of glory. It's the essence of Ahura Mazda. And this made Ohrmazd immortal and all-wise. Ahriman, frustrated that he could not strike down an immortal man, started to think of a trickster plan. The trickster plan, might sound familiar to you, was to plant doubt in the mind of Ohrmazd about his origins, about who he knew Ahura Mazda to be. And the moment that doubt was planted in his mind, it is said that the Farna flew out of his head like a bird into the sun. And that moment, he could strike down this strong first man who was said to be 7 poles high and wide. The earth trembled when Ohrmazd fell down dead. But the earth angel came again. This time, she took the body to the sun, or the sun's rays down to the body, depends on the version. And the sun purified the body, extracting the seed, the essence, which was kept in guardianship by the good angels or deities of Ahura Mazda. From his body, it is said that all the metals and minerals of the earth grew, and after 40 years grew this wonderful plant, which you may know as the rhubarb, for me, the rivas plant. Here we see Masio Masiane, the first man and woman who were born from this plant. It took Masio Masiane 50 years to eventually find out about that wonderful act of coitus. But from their union were born all of humanity, mortal and vulnerable to Ahriman's forces. Yet the seed of glory of Farna remained guarded, only to be discovered by the chosen few. So that's the end of the story, and I'll quickly go into the discussion. In my paper, I briefly touch on the Zoroastrian creation, on the Zoroastrian tradition. We won't have time to go deep into it now. Of course, the West mostly knows Zarathustra through Nietzsche, and Jungians know him through Jung on Nietzsche's Zarathustra. But what's essential to know is that the tradition of Zarathustra was primarily passed down orally and only put into text around 1,000 years after his time. Scholars debate the exact timing of his life, but the consensus leans towards 2000 to 1500 BCE. And although we're looking at a creation story, Zarathustra was less interested in the metaphysics of the divine, but more in the human responsibility in the individual choice. This was at a time of tribal life, and thus it was completely new and revolutionary. He emphasized the choice of the individual and the individual soul's connection to the one God, Ahriman, of wisdom and light. He argued that humans could choose beyond their tribal habits and patterns and be held responsible as individual souls. Now, it goes beyond the scope of this presentation, but I argue that Zarathustra's teachings were the first, and perhaps one of the first, archaic seeds of Jung's later individuation theory. Now, my connection to this tradition is very personal. I was born into an intermixed family of Zoroastrians and Muslims, and I spent the first 8 years of my life in Iran, growing up between the Zoroastrian fire temple and the mosque around the corner. Now, I first want to briefly touch on Jung's exploration on the dark side of God, specifically in Answer to Job. In this text, Jung toils with Yahweh's wrath and the suffering he inflicted on faithful Job. In the story of Job and throughout the Abrahamic religions, the dark side of God is integrated within deity itself, at least in the beginning. Yahweh embodies both wrathful and merciful aspects and holds the duality of dark and light within a single God. This continues in Christianity in the figure of the devil, a fallen angel who was once part of God's glory. Now, what's fundamentally different in the Zoroastrian creation story is the absence of an original unity. From the very beginning, there is a stark duality, a cosmic split, or perhaps a cosmic trauma that defines cosmic order and disorder. There is an exception in the Zoroastrian tradition, which is Zurvanism, a later heretical branch that's part of this tradition, which presents Zurvan as the god of infinite time, as the father of both Ahriman and Ohrmazd. And although Zurvanism influenced early Western perceptions of Zoroastrianism, it's marginalized within Zoroastrian communities and scholarship as its core idea that original unity of Zurvan is not to be found in the early scriptures, the Gathas, that are believed to be rooted in Zarathustra's teachings directly. So with this exception of the Zurvanist branch, what I found most important distinction between Yahweh and the discussion of dark side of God by Jung and the Ohrmazd and Ahriman duality is that Yahweh is a totality. And I quote Jung here, "This is perhaps the greatest thing about Job, that faced with this difficulty, he does not doubt the unity of God. As certain as he is of the evil in Yahweh, he's equally certain of the good. Yahweh is not split, but is an antinomy, a totality of inner opposites. And this is the indispensable condition for his tremendous dynamism, his omniscience, and his omnipotence." This is in Answer to Job. So what I want to now turn to is Donald Kalsched's theory on the archetypal defenses of this personal spirit, because I think that the Zoroastrian creation story lends itself better to explain it through a Kalschedian lens, so to say, because of this original split at the beginning of the cosmos and this lack of original unity. In his writing, just a brief discussion of Don's theories. In his writing, Don Kalsched explores how trauma impacts the soul or personal spirit, especially in early childhood before the ego has fully developed. The child's heart is broken, Kalsched writes, before it has a heart. When a child faces trauma that overwhelms their immature ego, they are unable to process this experience. The trauma, viewed as an injury to the capacity to feel, this is quoting Russell, can disrupt the child's psychosomatic unity and threatens their core being. To protect against this overwhelming threat, a life-saving mechanism of dissociation occurs. This dissociation, which Kalsched terms the self-care system, can manifest into a split of a light angel and a dark angel. The dark angel is violent, aggressive, and it severs connection to feeling, memory, and bodily sensations, whereas the light angel does this through creating illusions and stories. This self-care system serves as a defense mechanism, guarding the child's personal spirit and unlocking access to it. This then continues into adulthood with its variety of consequences. For Kalsched, then, healing involves by humanizing these archetypal forces and finding or becoming a mediating third that helps integrate the fragmented parts and help the client access the human vulnerability and the painful affects that go with it. And here the ego unites again with the personal spirit, which then becomes the seed for new life. Now let's apply this. I found another one of Blake's paintings, which depicts the dark and light angel well. And I also found an article which argued that Blake was probably influenced by the Zoroastrian philosophy. Now let's apply Kalsched's theory to the Zoroastrian creation story. Ahriman represents the dark angel perfectly. And as we can quickly observe, we see that there's a repetition compulsion in his relentless destruction of Ahura Mazda's creation. Every new life form he needs to destroy. Described as non-life in the scriptures, whereas Ahura Mazda is described as life, Ahriman embodies the anti-consciousness force that Kalsched identifies as this dark angel. This violent, aggressive entity severs connection to consciousness, particularly around affects perceived as threatening or annihilating. Ahriman's compulsive repetition to destroy each new life form mirrors this dark angel's drive to eliminate any emerging possibility that it deems threatening. Now, it's quite evident that the dark angel and Ahriman have quite a lot in common. And I want to quickly now focus on Spenta Amiritat, or as Corban calls her, the earth angel. Sometimes it's Spenta Armaiti, who is like a close sister, but for now, I'll just use the umbrella of Spenta Amiritat. I'm particularly interested in her role, her essence, and how she fits into Kalsched's framework. The earth angel, Spenta Amiritat, emerges as a redemptive figure in the aftermath of Ahriman's attacks on the first plant, the animal, and man. She acts as a transformative third between Ahriman and Ahura Mazda, retrieving the essence from the bodies of those poisoned or killed by Ahriman. Through her interventions that are very much alchemical in nature, remember the pounding of the plant, the dissolution in the moon waters, and the calcinatio in the sun, she makes them thrive and multiply, another alchemical operation. So she embodies a powerful agent of life transformation and regeneration. Note here that she is the agent that works with the body of the plant, the powder, the animal, and the man, and helps with incarnation and embodiment. In Kalsched's theory, she is an embodiment angel, whereas Ahriman is a disembodiment angel. And if you've read Trauma and the Soul, you see how Kalsched compares the dis from Dante to disembodiment, dissociation, disease, and all the disses that we have. So I'm going to quickly go because I think I have only a few minutes left. And I just want to focus on this last motif, which is the seed, or the citra, as we call them, or the essences that she every time retrieves from the plant, the cow, and the primordial man. And this could represent, I argue in my paper, the divine essence or the personal spirit in Kalsched's work. After the attack or injury, her main focus is to retrieve and bring back that divine essence into the earth body, again, embodiment, as a divine guardian and being of the earth. Corban compares her, by the way, to Sophia. She's responsible for wholeness between spirit and matter. And also interesting to note that she's a consort and daughter of Ahura Mazda, and together they have a child or an offspring called wholeness, Hurvatat. And her own name means life-giving humility. While Ahriman embodies the negative, unconscious pole of the trickster archetype, the earth angel has positive elements of the trickster archetype. She's an intermediate figure that moves between realms, heaven and earth, and her acts of destruction, such as the pounding, the dissolving, and the purifying by fire, are redemptive and alchemical in nature. I see her as a cosmic alchemist. She distills the seed and essence, regenerating life instead of the purely anti-life and anti-consciousness force that Ahriman represents. So to conclude, as a psychopomp figure or transitional object, Spenta Amiritat mediates between the worlds and fragmented realities. She echoes this positive role of the psychotherapist or the psychoanalytical field entering the story after the trauma or injury has occurred. She operates in this middle space, a transitional space, carrying out what we would see in the alchemical work in a psychoanalytical field. She then makes both good and evil work for the ongoing evolution of life on Earth and moving it more towards Asha, or truth, an essence. Now, this paper is my first attempt to apply a Jungian and more specifically a Kalschedian theory on this stark myth of duality. But I would be interesting to apply it to a larger and a collective process of human evolution, both on a micro and a macrocosm, especially on the evolution of human consciousness over time. If you have any thoughts about this, be really interested to hear now, or maybe you can email me. I just wanted to end on this note, which is the flyer and of the conference, and of course, beloved Philemon. And this is the symbol of Zoroastrianism. If you ever have been in a Zoroastrian temple or know anyone Zoroastrian, they might have a necklace, or we have it always in the house. And often people think this is Zoroaster, but it's not. This is the Faravahar, this symbol, and it represents the Faravashi, which is the larger soul of the human soul. So when a human being incarnates, according to Zoroastrian tradition, there's the Urvan, the soul that comes into the body here and bears responsibility for each action and gathers experience lists as a human being. But the Urvan is sent down by the Faravashi. And the Faravashi is like a big soul or a larger soul or a higher self, or the self from Jungian perspective. So I always saw, for me, Philemon was the Faravashi of Jung's Urvan, of Jung's soul here. I wonder if there is a connection. I've never read that he made these connections, but it's strikingly similar. And yeah, this is the bibliography I've used. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Farânak. I'm going to stop the recording.